Good evening, everyone, and live from Yeshivas Lubavitch Cincinnati's Cheder on Holla room on Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan's computer, so that we don't have any difficulties like we had last time. You are watching the Yeshivas Lubavitch Cincinnati Alumni Channel, and we are live. So, Bruchim Aboyim. First, I want to wish each and every one of you a ksiva v'chasima toiva l'shana toiva u'masuka should be written and sealed for a gezunti yor begashmius u'beruchnius b'chol mili demeitav in every single way v'bona chayim mezoyna v'kulam reviche. Everybody should be gebenched from the Eibishter's tremendous treasure of brochus in all deeds, needs, and matters. Tonight's shir, entitled "What is the benefit, what is the gain of learning all these esoteric topics of the Torah?" is a very, very important topic, a very fundamental topic. And the truth be told, and it's a Chassidus Fabrengen, it's always about telling the truth, is that I really don't feel that I really should be giving the shir. When we set up the shir and the topics, and a big thank you and shout out to the Hanhola of the Alumni Committee, Bereshis Rabbi Binyamin Lerner, the one that was scheduled to give this shir was Reb Zalman Baris, Olav Shalom. It's still hard for me to say those words, Olav Shalom. And for him to give the shir about the benefits of learning Chassidus and esoteric topics and mysticism came natural to him. He would always say the famous vort. I heard it from him many, many times. When it came to learning the halachas of Kiddush HaChodesh in the Rambam, which there are many mathematical equations. You have to know the way the sun and the orbit, etc., the earth orbits, etc. So he would always chazah the vort that there are two types of people that know Hilchos Kiddush HaChodesh very well. The first type are people that know math. They enjoy calculations. They enjoy all these different, scenarios of math. So it works out well for them. The other group of people that would enjoy this type of Kiddush HaChodesh are people that actually live on the moon and the sun. If you live there, you may know more about it. So the same thing is true about esoteric topics and Chassidus. There are two types of people which can really, really give a shir. One person can give a shir. It's a topic, another interesting topic. It would be much better, more appropriate if the one giving the shir would actually live what he's learning. And that's why if Rabbi Baris cannot give the shir now, as he was intended to according to our plan, the shir should be Le'iloi Nishmasai, it should be for aliyah of his very, very holy neshama. So now let's start. This is not a new question. What is the benefit from learning the mystical parts of the Torah, learning Chassidus, learning about levels that seemingly we have no connection with? As a matter of fact, we all know, when we were grown up with the story, that a chassid asked the Tzemach Tzedek this very question as to what is the benefit from learning all these parts of Torah that seemingly we don't understand, seemingly has no connection to us. And the Tzemach Tzedek answered, the famous answer, that we learn for the aha. And the chassid said, what do you mean you learn for the aha? I don't know if he said it or his eyes said it. Like, what does that mean that we are learning for the aha? And the Tzemach Tzedek said that we all know that sometimes people eavesdrop on other people's conversations. And you can hear someone describing on the other side of the wall about a certain person or a certain scenery or a certain house. And you're getting little tidbits of information. But you don't have a full picture yet of what they're talking about. And all of a sudden the door opens up, or years later you see they say, oh, that was the person they were talking about. And you say, oh, aha, now I get it. Now it all makes sense. Now, all these things, which until now I had no idea what I was really hearing, all begin to make sense once and for all. So the Tzemach Tzedek said that right now we learn Chassidus, and there are so many different dargis in Alikus that we don't understand, that we don't know about. And we are sort of learning, like eavesdropping about another world that's out there. We're hearing information behind the wall. However, when Mashiach comes, and all of a sudden the wall gets torn down, the whole world is going to see the greatness of the Eibishter and Gilui Elikos. So the Chassidim that lived and they learned the Chassidus, so they're all going to say, that is what it meant when I heard about Atzilus and Keser and Ak and all these dargis. Oh, Atu Yadaiti, Yetz Veisich, Yetz Kenich. Now I know what they're talking about. But that's a very, very ruchnistic answer. That's very inspiring for someone that actually, is really anticipating the immediate Isgalus, and he finds a geschmack in getting a little preview. He gets a geschmack in, in preparing for the future, the imminent present. But, he buys into this. But I really want to address on a certain level about the benefit day to day. How can you explain to someone, besides, of course, that there's a mitzvah of Yedias Hashem, you have the mitzvah of knowing the Eibishter, and part of knowing the Eibishter is learning Chassidus. That's how we know Hashem. Kulanu Yoidei Shemecha. We have to be Yoidei Shemecha. We have to know the Eibishter's name, and we have to have Hada Salikei Avicha. We have to know Alikus. So yeah, we learn Chassidus. But how can you explain to somebody the benefit, the power of Chassidus on a very, very basic level, in a level that's refreshing in a manner day to day? So obviously, when you have to give the shir, you have to think about what you're going to say and how you can actually apply it to yourself. It has to start inside, has to start from oneself. And if something gets internalized inside, it's easier to reflect that on the outside. So I want to tell you a story. You may have heard the stories from me, and it's one of my famous Yankel of Helm stories. But in this case, I think it's a very, very important story. And that is that there was one time a little boy. And this little boy, his father wanted to teach him the ways of the world. And he told him, son, I want to teach you about business. What's business? Business is that when you invest something, you have one thing, and now you come back with two, you have $1, now you have $2, you are successful in business. So I'm going to give you $1, and I want to see how successful you are in business. So the son goes down the street, and the first person he meets tells him, what are you doing here in the market? What's tutsu in market? Hey, Johnny, what are you doing in the market? You don't buy, you don't sell. Was tust du da echti during Marco? Was tust du in the market? So he says, I'm here to do business. What's the business? I have $1, and I want to come with 2. The guy realizes that he has a fish over here. Tells him, no problem. I'll give you 2 quarters for your $1. Now you got double. Oh, kid's thrilled. Gets 2 quarters. Danach geht the kid weiter. The guy meets another guy who wants to do more business, wants to be a very successful businessman. The guy says, you know what? I'll give you 3 dimes for you 2 quarters. Great. Now he feels great. Another guy says, I'll give you 4 nickels for your 3 dimes. And finally, he meets the big businessman who says, I'll give you 5 pennies for your 4 nickels. And he comes back to his father and he says, I'm such a successful businessman. And right now, I took your $1 and look what I have now. And he takes the 5 pennies and puts it on the table. So this is a Geshmaka story if you want to bring out how not always is more, sometimes more is less, etc. And that's really the main point I want to talk about this evening. And that is that even on a very, very practical level, for someone that's not looking for necessarily a spiritual high, he's a Balabatisha person. He's not doing it for iskashrus, he's learning Chassidus, he's not so inspired by Das Alekei Avicha. So why should this person learn Chassidus? What benefit does he have by opening up the Sefer? And to be masbir it is very, very poshut. You are opened up to a new world. Not talking about a world that we don't understand, because that you could open up a Chinese book, a Japanese book, a French book, unless you're French, sorry, Rabbi Benrus. But for most people, if they're opening up these books from other languages, they also don't understand. That's not what we mean, a new world that we don't understand. I'm talking about a book that you can actually understand, but it opens you up to something that we don't see in this world. And that is, how do we measure higher and lower? How do we measure more and less? In this world, we are surrounded, and because we are surrounded by a certain culture, this culture seeps into us. And that culture is that somebody that has, what ranks somebody higher on the ladder? What ranks somebody higher on the totem pole? What makes somebody more chashuv? What makes somebody better? What makes somebody higher? What makes somebody more respected or more feared or more influential? The answer always boils down to what the person has. It's the difference between the haves and the have-nots. Those that have are more, are higher, are greater. Those that have not are less. And therefore, it's a matter of the world. People with money, they have influence. Everyone knows the famous story. There was once a gvir. The gvir, unfortunately, the wheel of fortune turned on this gvir. Now this gvir doesn't have the money that he wanted or that he had. And one day he comes home and he's depressed. You know, it's not a joke. People that lose money, you know, we know that Rashi tells us in Chumash that part of giving tzedakah to a gvir is that he should feel, even if it means 100 men running in front of him, because they get used to a certain comfort, a certain lifestyle. He comes home and he tells his wife, you know what? I could understand. I lost my seichel. I lost my money. No. But it seems that with my money went my seichel. Looks like I lost my mind. So the wife says, what do you mean you lost your mind? He says, when we had money, I would get calls all the time for my advice. People wanted to hear my input. People wanted to hear what I had to say. People wanted to hear my wisdom. All of a sudden, no money, no advice, no wisdom. I must have lost my mind too. But unfortunately, we know that part of the ways of the world is that when people want to get people to invest, people don't just part with their money, just not the way things work. However, if they're invested in a project and you heard their opinion and they get involved, then they also get financially involved. So everything is cheshbonis. The more a person has, that's what makes them want, that's what makes officially them higher, greater, more important. And that's a very, very tough world to live in. Very competitive world. A world where we start measuring people not by who they are, rather by what they have. You know, I was speaking recently to a businessman, and he says there's a big problem in the world today. I said, what's the problem with the world today? That when you meet somebody and you ask somebody, so tell me, who is this person? So they answer, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, he's a businessman. Meanwhile, that's just answering what they do. I asked, who are they? What type of person are they? But in the world that we live in, people are defined by what they have, by what they do, by their successes, and it can lead to a world where it's alma de shikra, a world of falsehood, which really the respected people could be looked at as the schleppers. It's in line to go to dog. As a schlepper. Meanwhile, these are the pure, beautiful people of the world. Anshe chesed, anshe emes. But they're looked down at. Nacha person. Who are those which are honored and respected and who are put on the head tables and the daises, etc.? These was blasen sich von aller Seiten. Kabushefer Gadol Cheruseinu. They blasen and they blasen. They're all over the place. But this is Alma de Shikra. However, you open up a Maimer Chassidus, and even if you don't understand all the lofty concepts, but you understand a basic Indian, and that is, let's talk about the Seder of the Oilimis, for example. Matzilos, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. And you ask a regular person, so which one is first, which one is second? So they say Atzilos is higher than Bria, Bria is higher than Yetzira, Yetzira is higher than Asiya. And there's actually a beautiful mashal of the Rebbe, which is Derech Agav, to explain the difference between the four Oilimis. The Rebbe says that there was one time a king. The king woke up in the morning and he's sitting in his room and he's thinking private inyanim, private things. Then the king puts aside his private thoughts and he starts thinking in his room, private room, about the needs of the kingdom that he runs, that he owns, that he's the king of. After thinking about the needs and the business of the day, he gets dressed and he calls a meeting of his executives, of his ministers, his most loyal people. And they all get together in Parliament, in Congress, and they debate and they discuss the laws. And they come up with a solution, they come up with a law, whatever everything they're coming up with. And then they send out messengers to the people with the decree, the new law of the land. And then you have the people that get the decree, which can become a debate amongst the people if the king really exists. You're saying that this is the decree of the king, but does the king really exist? So look at the four levels. There's really 5 levels. There's the king thinking about himself in his own room. That's like Elikus before Brias Olam. It's totally private. There's no Olamis before. Then there's the Eibishter, there's the king, the way he's in his own room, but he's thinking about the Welt. It's like Atzilus. Atzilus is a world where it's all Etzloi v'samuch, it's all in the Eibishter's mind. And then you have the ministers of the king. These people are so loyal. They're separate from the king. They have their own homes. They are their own mitzias. But their loyalty and devotion, without question, is impeccable. And they, for a second, they don't deny the existence of the king. Of course they know there's a king. They've seen the king with their own eyes. As we know the story of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Chassid came to the Tzemach Tzedek and he says that I have sveikis in Emunah, I have doubts in Emunah. And the Tzemach Tzedek asked him, do you have doubts that there's a czar? He said, I have no doubts that there's a czar. He said, have you ever seen the czar? He says, no. So how are you so sure that there's a czar? And he said, because I have a cousin that saw the czar in the capital. My cousin told me that the czar exists, and my cousin doesn't lie. And Tzemach Tzedek said, Kukav the Egin, Vasam Gezen, the Melech, look at the eyes that saw the Eibishter, and I also don't lie. So these ministers, they're mamish, bottled to the Melech, but they're their own mitzias. Then you have the messengers. The messengers are also, they may have never even seen the king, but they are wearing the uniform of the king. They work for the king. They get a paycheck from the king. They know that in the deep parts of the palace, the inner chambers of the palace, there exists a king. They may never have seen him, but they're in the atmosphere of Melech. Then you have the people of the kingdom, which to them, the whole king is something which many of them have only heard of from their parents and grandparents. So Atzilus is the melech thinking about the creation. Bria are the ministers. Yitzira are the messengers. And Asiya, our world, our life, our reality, is like the people, which we can even have a debate. Is there an Eibishter? The fact that the debate exists in this world shows how distant we are, because it should be an obvious thing, of course, for an Eibishter. But we live in Alma de Shikra. So getting back to the main Nekuda, when you ask yourself, what makes, you ask it simple, Mesifta boy. It's your Aleph Mesifta, it's your Beis Mesifta. And ask yourself, the Mesifta boy that's in you, what makes Atzilus higher than Bria? What makes Bria higher than Yetzira? What makes Yetzira higher than Asiya? What is it that gives it higher ranking? What does it have that makes it higher? What does, what influence, what does it have that gives it that influence? And all of a sudden the kid will look at you and say, have? It's what he doesn't have that makes him higher. So what does that mean? It doesn't have? The less mitzias, the more bittul, the higher it is. What makes Atzilus higher than Bria is the fact that it has more emes and bittul. What makes Bria higher than Yetzira? The fact that it has a higher level of bittul. What makes Yetzira higher than Asiya? The fact that it has more bittul. All of a sudden, we're opened up to a new world. A world where bittul is recognized as a maila. A world where not having mitzias ranks you higher. And that runs contrary to everything we've been taught from our life. Not taught in yeshiva, but taught in the world. In the world, we're taught that we live in a society where it's the survival of the fittest. Only those that can be more chevraman, those that can beser, they're the ones that can be more matzliach, those that can put others down, those that can say the sharp word and wear the sharp clothing, and to hustle, bustle, and muscle. They're the ones which will make it in life. It's all of a sudden we're exposed to a new reality, a reality of emes, a reality of truth, a reality where bittul is recognized. So besides the chidush shebedover, it also begins to seep into us. How we look at everything, how we look at value, what becomes valuable to us. All of a sudden, just because someone has something doesn't make him greater. Our aspirations begin to change. We no longer ask, someone told me this week, what's the difference between me, not me, but that person, he says, about me and this other person. Say, how are you going to explain the difference between you and the other person? Having this open fabrengen. He says, when that other person meets somebody, what the question that's being asked is, what can he do for me? When I meet someone, I ask, what can I do for him? It's a fundamental switch. It's a whole new perspective. Or as the words of English in the fancy lexicon, it's a paradigm shift. It's a whole new understanding. It's a whole new understanding of a value system. So even if we don't necessarily understand the pratim, and we don't necessarily feel connected, because many times we like to hear a good word. Give me a good word and avoid the gemaimer, something to inspire me. Give me a shot of inspiration, a boost. Keep me going. But we're not Polish Chassidim. Even though the Rebbe does understand in Dora Shvi, the first Inyan is the Yom Yom, which is seemingly small, but it's not just Verte, it's like life pills, life understandings. But it is not a deep Maimorim, it's Vertlach, so to speak. And therefore, there obviously is a room for that in Dor HaShvi, which ain't kamekoy melaharich, but just the nekuda. But the moment we open the Sefer, and we are exposed to this new value system, that value system is priceless. That value system is a breath of fresh air. Imagine somebody is suffocating and he gets a breath of fresh air, finally feels that freshness. He feels that, opening of his lungs. And that is what's happening every time we learn Chassidus. We're getting like a whack in our face of the fresh air of a whole new perspective. And that allows us to look at a fellow person without asking the question, so what can he do for me? And without being spoiled by what a person has, because that's not a person's value. We're getting closer to Rosh Hashanah. We're talking about Shuva, Tfilu, Tzedakah, Mavirin, Isroya, Agzeira. There's a famous story with Sir Moses Montefiore, who the Montefiore Cemetery in Queens is named after, a very, very big and famous Jewish philanthropist. And so he lived in England. And when you're Jewish and rich and influential, you're going to have enemies. And the enemies basically mastered, and they said that this Sir Moses Montefiore, this great Jewish philanthropist, is cheating on his taxes. He's not paying his right dues. So the queen called him, and the queen asked him, Sir Moses, what is your true value? How much are you worth? He said, I'll have to go to my accountant, my Oirich Din, I'll get back to you. And he came, and he gave her a number, whatever the number was. And the queen said, oh, it looks like my people were right, because everybody knows that you have much more than this. And Sir Moses looked at her and said, dear queen, you didn't ask me how much I have. You asked me how much I'm worth. How much I'm worth is what I gave to tzedakah, because that no one can take away from me. That's my real value. What I have more, much more. But you asked me how much I'm worth. And that's a whole deep and different perspective. And for us, it's so important. People think that it's specifically for those which are in Kodesh a whole day. So Chassidus talks to them. It's so important. But I say fakert. It's so much more important for those which are actually going to work every day. Because it's specifically those which are going to the real world. I don't like to use that term because Kodesh is not real. But the reality of the world that we live in, people that are going to their works and to their jobs, they're the ones which are actually being exposed, and it's hitting them in their face. The system of the needy and greedy, the system of the haves versus the have-nots. They're the ones that are being challenged by this even more. And it's even more important that those which are going to work have a kfiyas and limud Chassidus, because that will enable us to stay focused on who we are for real and the real value for real, because we get lost. We get lost in every way because there's bills to pay, there's deadlines to meet, obligations to uphold, and it could be very difficult. And we always need that bright and right perspective. And that's why it's so important. Even if we feel like, come on, I'm learning this darga, that darga, it doesn't inspire me. But just by asking yourself the question, what makes this darga higher and lower than the darga before? The fact that it's more batal, it's what it doesn't have, not what it does have. That perspective itself is a famous Hayoim Yoim. With Hayoim Yoim, it's 2 lines where it says, what was the uftu of Chassidus? What did Chassidus accomplish? And it said, Chassidus revealed to us how small a person is, but how great they can reach. What does that mean? I want to finish with this because we have Meir in 5 minutes. But what does this mean? Before you learn Chassidus, we look at our relationship with the Eibishter as the creator of the world, and we're the ones that are being created. But all of a sudden you learn Chassidus, you realize that in order to create the world, the Eibishter had to put everything on the side and all the tzimtzumim, and just to get to us, we're mamish. We would have thought that there were 2 dargas, Eibishter and Bria. No, there was a whole Ard and Sof before the tzimtzum, and there was a whole tzimtzum, and all these kav, and all these shtalshlos, until all the way on the bottom, there's little me. Wow, you learned that. You're like, whoa, I didn't know how small I was. Hey, my big me, I'm just like the bottom. All of a sudden, the whole world was opened up to me that there's little me. So it could be depressing. You're like, oh, I thought I was so buddy. Now I realize I'm bottom. On the other hand, see, this reveals to us the power of what we can do with our mitzvahs. That when you do a mitzvah, you, all the way on the bottom, are getting invited to the palace of the Eibishter all the way on top. You're building the Dira for the Eibishter. That Eibishter, which is so far, and for him to create the world, went through such the whole process. That Eibishter you can reach with your mitzvah. So on one hand, it's how small you are. On the other hand, it's how high you can reach. And that's what we have to internalize. When we learn Chassidus, it's good for us to realize how small we are, because it's important that we don't allow ourselves to get bigger than ourselves. Making avodah zarah doesn't start with getchkes. It also could be ourselves. We make ourselves bigger than we are. We create an image of ourselves, and it's good to shrink that image. It's good to realize how small we are in comparison to the Kavanah Elyoinah. On the other hand, it's the most empowering thing when you learn Chassidus, to realize what you can do. The Eibishter, Nis'ava Kodesh Baruch Hu, Dira B'tachtoinim, L'maisi Yedecha Tichsoif, the Eibishter empowered us, and especially in our generation. When the Rebbe told us, Tut alts was ihr kennt, the Rebbe gave us the Achrayas to bring Moshiach. It was the most empowering statement. People say, oh, the Rebbe abandoned us. I say, the Rebbe empowered us. The Rebbe gave us the biggest koyach, the Achrayas, to bring the world to the Tachlis Abriya. And if the Rebbe gave us the Achrayas, it means he also gave us the koyach. So l'chaim, I want to wish once again to each and every one of you, Eksiva v'chsima toiva, l'shana toiva m'suka. Let's all take ourselves achlotis, that we shouldn't have to reach another decade. People are all excited, Tavshin Pei. I told the Bochum, this is a true story. I started off with Reb Zalman Baris. I'm going to finish off. Tavshin Ayin, almost 10 years ago exactly, Rosh Hashanah, my family was in New York. And Reb Zalman, we were then on Summit Road, and the mikveh was on Canova Avenue, for those of you that were there and remember. And my family wasn't there, so Reb Zalman invited me to eat. And he said, once you're eating by me, why go all the way up to Twigwood and you have to walk all the way down to Canova, to Yeshiva by yourself? Sleep in my house, you're alone anyways. So I said, fine. I came to his house with Fabracht, and on the way to his house, he said, Gershom, I feel like I am entering a different planet. Tavshin Ayin is not another year, it's another planet. And he says, I don't know if I would be able to handle being here for Tavshin Pei. It would be crazy. I can't even imagine being here. This feeling, Sekenet Zai Nochatog in Golos, we have to internalize. And Ikidism knows Zenzach mit den Rebben Dalamata and all the Grace Chassidim, Reb Zalman Soicham, and we'll again cheering each other simchas. And I look forward to being connected to each and every one of you. We should have these galos, take it from Yad Mamish. And once again, Aksiva v'Aksima Teva v'Shana Teva Mesuk.